The room smelled of cigarette smoke and fear, though only one man knew which fear belonged to whom. It was February 1964, and the weigh-in for the heavyweight championship of the world was about to become something no one expected. Convention Hall in Miami Beach buzzed with reporters, photographers, and officials who had gathered to witness what most believed would be a formality before a slaughter. Sonny Liston, the most terrifying man in boxing, would weigh in, stare down his young challenger, and tomorrow night destroy him. But Cassius Clay had other plans. Plans that began not with his fists, but with his eyes. He arrived like a hurricane wearing a suit. The doors flew open, and suddenly the room was filled with noise, movement, chaos. Clay was shouting before anyone could focus a camera, his voice bouncing off the walls like thunder trapped indoors. "I'm gonna eat you alive. You're too ugly to be champion. I'm the greatest. I'm the king of the world." The reporters exchanged glances. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads. The young fighter had clearly lost his mind. But look closer now. Look past the performance to the performer. Watch his eyes as he scans the room, taking in every detail, measuring every reaction. This was not madness. This was mathematics. Imagine yourself standing in that crowded room. The heat of too many bodies pressed together. The blue-gray haze of cigarette smoke drifting toward the ceiling. The sharp smell of flashbulbs popping, one after another, like tiny explosions of light. And cutting through it all, the voice of a 22-year-old who was either the bravest man in boxing or the craziest. Sonny Liston stood on the other side of the room, watching. He was everything Clay was not supposed to be able to beat. A former convict, a mob-connected enforcer, a puncher so powerful he had ended fights with single blows. He had destroyed Floyd Patterson twice, each time in the first round. The boxing world had already written Clay's obituary. They were just waiting for Liston to deliver it. But something was happening that the reporters could not see. Something in the space between the two fighters that only they could feel. Clay pushed through the crowd, still shouting, his arms waving, his entourage struggling to keep up. "Round 8 to prove I'm great. If he even lasts that long, I'll float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. His hands can't hit what his eyes can't see." The words tumbled out in a rhythm that was almost musical, almost hypnotic. Later, people would call it poetry. Right now, they called it insanity. One reporter wrote in his notebook, "The kid has cracked under pressure." Another wrote, "Liston by knockout, round 1. But watch Liston's face. Watch it carefully. Something is shifting behind those cold eyes. According to those who stood closest, something strange happened when Clay finally reached Liston. The younger man was still shouting, still performing, but his eyes locked onto Liston's with a focus that cut through all the noise. And Liston, the monster who had made grown men weep with a single glance, did something no one expected. He looked away. It was only for a moment, a fraction of a second. But Clay saw it, and in that tiny gesture, he saw everything he needed to know. Close your eyes now and feel the weight of that moment, the noise fading to a distant hum, the smoke hanging motionless in the air. Two men standing face to face, one screaming and one silent, and between them a secret being passed like a note in a dark room. The secret was simple. Sonny Liston was afraid. Not of Clay's fists, not of his speed, not of anything physical at all. Liston was afraid because he could not understand what he was seeing. Every fighter he had ever faced had shown fear. He could smell it, taste it, use it against them. But this young man showed nothing but fire. This young man seemed to welcome the destruction that was coming. And Liston, for the first time in years, did not know what to do with that. The chaos continued. Officials tried to separate them. Sugar Ray Robinson, the legendary champion, pushed between them, acting as a buffer. Drew Brown, Clay's cornerman, played his role perfectly, pretending to restrain his fighter while secretly giving him room to continue the show. The whole thing looked like a riot on the verge of erupting. But beneath the surface, a chess match was being played, and Clay was already 3 moves ahead. Let your breathing slow now, matching the rhythm of this story. In the midst of all that noise, there was a strange stillness at the center, like the eye of a hurricane. Clay knew exactly what he was doing. He was planting seeds of doubt in soil that had never been cultivated. He was showing Liston something the champion had never encountered, a man who was not afraid to die. The doctors took Clay's blood pressure after the confrontation. It was 110/70, completely normal. The heart rate of a man taking a peaceful nap, not a man who had just screamed himself hoarse at the most dangerous fighter on the planet. When reporters asked about this later, Clay just smiled. "I was scared, man. Terrified. That's why my heart was beating so slow. It almost stopped from fear." No one laughed. They were beginning to realize that nothing about this young man was what it seemed. Picture now the room slowly emptying. The reporters filing out to write their stories about Clay's breakdown. The officials shaking their heads about the chaos. The photographers packing their equipment, certain they had captured images of a man coming apart at the seams. Everyone was writing the same story. Young fool loses his nerve. Will be destroyed tomorrow night. Everyone except Clay. He returned to his hotel room with his brother Rudy and his team, and as soon as the door closed, he became someone else entirely. The shouting stopped. The waving arms fell still. The man who stood in that quiet room was calm, calculating, almost serene. Breathe with him now. Feel the cool air conditioning washing away the heat of the confrontation. Feel the tension draining from muscles that had been coiled tight for the performance. Feel the smile spreading across his face as he replayed the moment when Liston's eyes had flickered with something that looked like doubt. "Did you see it?" he asked his brother. "Did you see his eyes?" Rudy nodded slowly. He had seen it. They all had, even if they didn't fully understand what it meant. "He's scared," Clay said, and the words hung in the air like a prophecy. "He don't know what to do with me. He's been fighting the same fight his whole life, and it always works. But I'm not the same fight. I'm something new, and he knows it." That night, while Liston sat in his own hotel room brooding over what had happened, Clay slept like a baby. According to those who were there, he was asleep before midnight and didn't stir until morning. The performance had taken everything out of him, but it had also given him something priceless: certainty. The weigh-in chaos had accomplished exactly what it was designed to do. The boxing commission had fined Clay $2,500 for his behavior. The odds against him had grown even longer. Every expert in the country was predicting his destruction, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the flicker in Liston's eyes. Imagine yourself in that hotel room now, the quiet after the storm, the curtains drawn against the Miami night, the gentle hum of the air conditioner, and on the bed, a young man who had just outthought the most dangerous fighter in the world, sleeping with the peace of someone who has already won. The story of what happened the next night is well known, how Clay danced and jabbed and made Liston miss again and again, how something got in Clay's eyes in the fourth round, possibly from Liston's gloves, and he fought nearly blind for 2 rounds, surviving on instinct and movement alone. How Liston sat on his stool at the end of the 6th round and refused to continue, claiming a shoulder injury that may or may not have been real. But all of that was consequence. The cause was here, in this weigh-in room, in this moment of theater that was also truth, in this performance that revealed more than it concealed. Listen now to the sounds of that distant afternoon fading into memory, the last flashbulbs popping, the last reporters hurrying out to file their stories, the last echo of Clay's voice bouncing off the walls. "I am the greatest. I am the king." Words that seemed like madness but were actually medicine, doses of doubt injected directly into his opponent's bloodstream. Some fights are won before the first punch is thrown. Some victories happen in the mind before they happen in the body. Cassius Clay understood this instinctively, the way some people understand music or mathematics. He knew that Sonny Liston's greatest weapon was fear, and the only way to defeat that weapon was to show no fear at all. But showing no fear and feeling no fear are different things. Years later, Ali would admit that he had been terrified before that fight. Liston could punch hard enough to kill a man, and everyone knew it. The fear was real. The courage was in acting as though it wasn't. Let your thoughts soften now, like the Miami evening softening into night. The hotel grows quiet. The reporters finish their stories and go to bed, confident that tomorrow they will witness a slaughter. The odds makers set the final lines, 7-1 against Clay. Liston goes to sleep believing his own legend, trying not to think about the crazy kid who looked at him without flinching. And in his own room, Cassius Clay dreams. What he dreams, no one knows. Perhaps he dreams of Louisville, of the bicycle that was stolen when he was 12, of the cop who taught him to fight so he could find the thief. Perhaps he dreams of Rome, of the gold medal that may or may not have ended up in a river. Perhaps he dreams of nothing at all, his mind finally quiet after the performance of his life. Or perhaps he dreams of what he will become, not just a champion, but a symbol, not just a boxer, but a poet, not just an athlete, but a voice for millions who had been told they had no voice. The journey from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali was still unfolding, still taking shape in the dark spaces between waking and sleeping. But tonight, that is all future. Tonight, there is only a young man in a hotel room, breathing slowly in the darkness, preparing for the fight of his life. Feel your own breathing matching his, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The rhythm of rest, the rhythm of recovery, the rhythm of a body preparing for what comes next. When morning came, Clay rose early. He prayed, as he always did. He ate lightly. He moved through the hours with the calm of someone who has already decided everything important. The fear was still there, somewhere beneath the surface, but it was contained now, channeled, transformed into something useful. At the arena that night, the crowd roared for Liston. They expected a coronation of violence. They expected the young loudmouth to be silenced forever. But when the bell rang and Clay began to move, something in the room shifted. He was faster than anyone had imagined. He was smarter than anyone had credited. And he was utterly, completely unafraid. Or so it seemed. The performance continued, even in the ring. Every dodge, every dance step, every taunting word between rounds was part of the same theater that had begun at the weigh-in. Clay was playing a character called Confidence, and he played it so well that it became real. Round after round, Liston swung and missed. Round after round, Clay's jabs found their target, turning Liston's face into a swelling mask of frustration and confusion. This was not the fight Liston had prepared for. This was not the scared kid he had expected to destroy. This was something else entirely. And when it was over, when Liston refused to leave his stool and the new champion danced around the ring screaming, "I shook up the world! I am the greatest thing that ever lived!" the reporters scrambled to rewrite their stories. The same men who had mocked him at the weigh-in now struggled to find words for what they had witnessed. But you and I know the truth. We know that the fight was won before it started. We know that a weigh-in room full of smoke and chaos was the real battlefield. We know that a single flicker of fear in Sonny Liston's eyes was worth more than any punch ever thrown. Drift now towards sleep as the story drifts toward its end. The arena empties. The crowd goes home. Somewhere in Miami, a new champion celebrates with friends and family, his voice still hoarse from shouting, his body somehow untouched by the monster everyone expected to destroy him. And in another room, Sonny Liston sits alone, trying to understand what happened. He will never fully understand. He will fight Clay again a year later, and lose even faster, knocked down in the first round by a punch so quick that photographers will argue for decades about whether it even landed. He will spend the rest of his life haunted by these losses, by this young man who looked at him without flinching and showed him something he had never seen before. Some say Liston threw those fights. Some say the mob was involved. Some say it was all a fix. But those who were there, those who saw the flicker in Liston's eyes at the weigh-in, know the simpler truth. He was beaten by a performance so complete, so committed, so impossibly brave that it short-circuited everything he knew about fighting. He was beaten by a young man who understood that the mind wins fights before the body even enters the ring. Let that understanding carry you into sleep now. Let it remind you that courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Let it remind you that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting harder, but from thinking differently. The smoke has cleared from that weigh-in room long ago. The reporters who mocked him are gone now. The champion who shouted and waved his arms has grown old and passed on to whatever comes next. But the lesson remains, drifting through the years like the echo of a voice that once proclaimed itself the greatest. And perhaps, in some small way, it was right. Sleep now. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own moments when fear whispers in your ear. When it does, Remember a young man in Miami who looked terror in the face and made it blink first. That is the power of belief. That is the art of performance. That is the quiet secret hiding inside all the noise. Rest now. The fight is over. The victory is won. And somewhere, in the space between legend and truth, a butterfly is still floating and a bee is still waiting to sting.